Thank you for joining us once again for the October webinar series. Our speaker today is Alireza Zohourian. Alireza is a PhD student at the University of New Brunswick and a research assistant at the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity, CIC. He has a profound interest in the Internet of Things, IoT security, and has spent the last year on its different aspects from architecture, protocols, and challenges. And the title of his presentation today is The IoT Threat Landscape. Alireza, the floor is yours, please.
Well, hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you. So welcome to the IoT Threat Landscape webinar. I've tried to do a very generic and high-level overview of the IoT and its threat landscape and security, basically, to just have a general overview of IoT. So the outline of my presentation has two major parts. The first is Internet of Things. What is IoT? Some definitions and explanations about IoT. Then I will discuss the IoT architecture. It's a very generic architecture for IoT, and then we'll discuss some applications and see the types of devices that we have in the IoT environment. And then we'll discuss some of the major challenges that IoT systems and networks face. So after a general overview of what IoT is and understanding its environment and atmosphere, we'll dive into the IoT threat landscape. We first discuss what is IoT security and why we need to care about it. Then we'll discuss how we can secure our IoT network, what are some pillars and some aspects that we need to take care of in order to have a secure IoT environment. And then I'll discuss some hot trends, basically hot problems and solutions that is being discussed in the literature. And then I will introduce two promising initiatives in IoT. And then in the end, we can have a discussion and Q&A if you want. So the Internet of Things. I will first start by a very generic and standard definition from IEEE. So there's a document published from IEEE that discusses some definitions and explains the atmosphere of the IoT networks. So the description that they give in that document is as it goes. A network of items, each embedded with sensors, which are connected to the internet. So in IoT, we're facing a large network of devices, sensors, everything that is connected to the internet. So let's go and look at the very standard definition, but this definition is for small environments because IEEE has two different definitions for large and small environments. So the definition is like this. An IoT is a network that connects uniquely identifiable things to the internet. The things have sensing or actuation and potential programmability capabilities. And through the exploitation of unique identification and sensing, information about the thing can be collected and the state of the thing can be changed from anywhere, anytime, by anything. So the idea is a very, very large network of devices, all connected together through the Internet of Things. And these things sense the environment, and we can get those sense data from those things and do analytics, lots of things. So IoT is a large enabler for industry and lots of kinds of applications. So there's a generic IoT architecture, a three-tier layer architecture. And starting from the bottom, we have the sensing layer, also known as physical layer or perception layer, which includes sensors, actuators, smart devices called things. And it basically senses the data from the environment and sends it to the next layer, which is the network layer. On the network layer, there are gateways, routers, access points, and et cetera, we call them sometimes edge nodes, fog nodes, and cloudlet nodes. And using these devices and nodes inside our network layer, we route those sensory data from the sensors and the sensing layer to the cloud layer. So the topmost layer, which is called cloud, includes servers, data centers, which we call cloud nodes. And what they do is basically big data and analytics, just storage, and lots of other applications that we can use. And basically the end user, which is us, use our mobile phone, tablets, computers to connect to our devices from the internet through the cloud. So this is a generic overview of the architecture in IoT. Let's discuss some IoT applications. So some tangible applications that we daily use are smart buildings, smart homes, smart security, and smart lighting. That it is basically related to home automation, home security, and using our Alexa devices to turn on the lights, use our mobile phone to, I don't know, play some music, or Alexa to play some music, our smart speakers to turn off on the lights, many things else, other things that we use daily. Moving one step further, we have smart transportation, smart city, Internet of Vehicles, which is basically a complete city with every building, every house, every vehicle, every intersection, traffic light is smart and connected to the internet, and all these devices are transmitting data to each other through the cloud servers and provide real-time applications such as IOV and automated driving, using, for example, cellular protocols such as 5G or hopefully 6G. Then there's smart industry, smart agriculture, maritime, and this is when it becomes a bit more critical and vital in the industry. There are lots of sensors to automate the processes in the factories, in the ports of entry. You could monitor the state of your farming. You can automate watering of the plants, many other things. And you can monitor or track the state of your ships and containers and vehicles through your port of entry. And then moving to the sort of one of the most critical applications, which is smart healthcare or Internet of Medical Things, in which very lives are interacting with. You might be monitoring the health metrics of some patients, or to the other end, doing real-time remote surgery, which could be very tricky in terms of security, and it's really obvious how it can be dangerous if the security is not maintained. Then moving to smart automation and monitoring and tracking are some general applications that you can use in different scenarios. Speaking of IoT devices or things, we have different kinds of sensors, such as motion sensors, humidity sensors, temperature sensors, blah, 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 tens of kinds of sensors. We have actuators like a small portable button, which you can configure this button to turn on the lights or turn off the TV or do lots of other things. Or we can have drug infusion pumps as actuators. So we have a scenario monitoring the patient's health metrics, and based on his or her metrics, we inject, like, for example, insulin into his veins. Then we have smart appliances like smart TVs, cameras, speakers, you could name it, smart, say, coffee machine, whatever, fridges. And then we have wearable devices such as Fitbits and smartwatches we daily use, and implantables, such as those sensors that are placed under the skins of those patients with critical illnesses. And we get to IoT challenges. These are the main three challenges that lead to IoT security, privacy, and trust issues. So scalability refers to both proliferation and heterogeneity in IoT environments. So nowadays, tens of devices are being introduced to the market daily. Thousands of devices are bought from different users with different behaviors, different functionalities. They use different protocols, technologies, and that makes our network very, very complicated and complex. So the next major challenge is interoperability, which is basically based on the lack of standardization. Some devices speak some language, other devices speak another language, another protocol. These devices cannot interoperate with each other, which makes lots of problems inside the network. Then we have resource constraints. These devices have lack of computing resources, storage capacity, and energy that they cannot run very strong encryption or authentication mechanisms. And in terms of energy, some of them are prone to energy depletion attacks, that they deplete the battery of a battery powered sensor, and they can disable or deny its service. So all of these lead to lots of security, privacy, and trust issues. Then we'll discuss the IoT threat landscape. So what is IoT security? So basically, IoT security is a cybersecurity strategy and protection mechanism that safeguards against the possibility of cyber attacks, which specifically targets physical IoT devices that are connected to the network. So these IoT devices with all these vulnerabilities make lots of problems and open new surfaces to be attacked. So we need to take care of those new surfaces. However, it would be wise to distinguish between IoT security and cybersecurity. So what makes these two different from each other? So the first thing is consequences. The consequences of IoT security are much, much vital. For example, we could have direct loss of life in the health applications. If we inject the wrong amount of some drug into a person's body, they might die. In terms of adversaries, they have different targets and different methods. For example, there has been some reports regarding an increase in ransomware against hospitals, because we are dealing with human lives. And if they could conduct a ransomware attack against the hospital, there's no way that the hospital has to pay those amounts, and they will reach their goals. In terms of composition, these devices are resource constrained compared to PCs and laptops, which are very powerful, can run extensive encryption and security mechanisms. Then the environments are much different. Deployments and maintenance of these devices are not all the times conducted by consumers. So some of the time when you don't deploy your IoT device properly, you might endanger its security. And economics is related to having the minimum device cost, which leads to lots of other issues like the resource constraints and so on and so forth. So why do we need to care about IoT security? I will give you three major attacks regarding IoT. So the first biggest one is a distributed denial of service attack using IoT devices, which is called the Mirai botnet or the DIN attack. And basically, the attackers used a malware called Mirai that propagated through a large number of IoT devices, most of which are vulnerable cameras and DVRs. And then using those infected or vulnerable cameras and DVRs, they attacked the DIN service provider, which is one of the largest service providers that companies such as Amazon and Netflix use its services, and their services were gone for several hours. The other example is OLED Wi-Fi baby heart monitor, which was hacked. So we're assuming that we're putting this device to monitor our heart metrics from our babies and children to our parents and grandparents, and we're supposing we're helping them, but we're actually not. Those devices were hacked. And if you, for the last example, if you search Jeep Cherokee hack, you will see that they have done remote carjacking, and they can control a smart car connected to the internet remotely, which is really frightening. With all this said, let's take a look at how we can secure these networks and what are some aspects that we need to take care of in order to secure our networks. So in terms of IoT security, there are different aspects that we need to take care of, or we can approach to secure the IoT. The first one is layer. So in terms of layer, there are, as we discussed in the architecture, sometimes we need to secure the sensing layer, the very devices that we're dealing with in terms of their interactions, the data they're transmitting, and the protocol they're using. Then security of networks, if we're using I don't know, blockchain and consensus algorithms, propagation algorithms, or we're using fog or edge computing in our network layer, we need to take care of their security. And in the cloud layer, we need to, as always, take care of the very inherent nature of cloud servers, which in the IoT environments and the botnet attacks, they could be easily, not easily, but they could be, their availability and their service will be denied by those botnets. In terms of protocol, there are physical protocols at the physical layer, like IEEE 802.15.4, like LoRa protocol that are basically physical or MAC layer protocols. Networking protocols such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth Low Energy, Zigbee, Z-Wave, you can name it. And these are some short range. We can name cellular protocols such as 5G, 4G, 6G, and up to long range. LoRaWAN, Sigfox, all of these protocols need to be secured. And there are also some major application layer protocols such as MQTT and CoAP. So the security of all these protocols is really important. Then we have the data. So we need to take care about the data collection, data in transit, and data at rest. And the first one is really inherent in IoT devices, and we don't have it in IT or cyber, traditional cybersecurity. So these end devices, these sensors, if the attacker have physical access to them, they can manipulate the device, and the device will send us abnormal data, which we don't want. Then the data in transit, we need to take care of it because it's being transmitted throughout the network, and the data at rest stored either on a cloud, which is a single point of failure. We need to take care of it and make sure it won't have security and privacy concerns. So there are some principles on all of these aspects, layers, protocols, and data that we need to take care of. So for security, we need to take care of the confidentiality by using lightweight and secure encryption algorithms. We need integrity. Some of these devices and protocols don't have replay protection or integrity protection mechanisms very well. So availability is a big problem because both IoT devices are vulnerable to, they can easily, you can easily deny their availability, or they could be used in order to attack others and disable their availability. We need authentication for both devices and users. Make sure the entity we're talking to is the one who we think he or she or it is. And authorization, we want to make sure that that user or that entity is doing what he, she, or it is supposed to do, not more. And in terms of privacy, we see some, lots of papers that are concerned about privacy, mostly in healthcare domain, because the privacy issue is sort of much critical in that domain. So we have three pillars for privacy, anonymity, unlinkability, and undetectability. So before explaining these, I need to discuss about IOI, item of interest, which is interesting to the attacker. The IOI could be the subject, the person, the device, or the computer that's inside the network. Could be a message that's been transmitted, an action that's been done. So anonymity is something that's related to the fact that the attacker cannot identify a subject. We don't want the attacker to identify a user or a device. Unlinkability is the ability to find the relationships between two devices or two IOIs. And undetectability is the ability of the attacker to detect or identify the existence of the very IOIs. So moving from the bottom to the top, considering the healthcare domain, if the attacker is able to detect two entities, the device and the user, the existence, the link between them, this device, this part device is connected to this user and could understand the user that is behind that device, connecting those two, they can do damage, they can do loss of life. And that is very important. So speaking of hot trends, these are four of the main trends that you will see in the literature. So blockchain as a distributed and decentralized storage system, or you could say ledger, secures the storage and transmission of data and eliminates the cloud, the centralized cloud, as a single point of failure and prevents data loss and unauthorized access throughout the network. And there's a huge amount of work done in the IoT security papers and privacy papers on that. We also have edge or fog computing, which is basically a distributed, decentralized computation, or we distribute our processing power throughout the network to offload the burden from the cloud servers. We could do real-time incident response services because they're way closer to the edge of the network, to the very end devices. And we can provide computing power for end devices to enable them to perform more secure encryption algorithms and security practices. Then a large and huge amount of works are on authentication and key agreements. We have mutual authentication where devices mutually authenticate each other. We have multi-factor authentication in which we use different factors such as identity, passwords, biometrics for authenticating the users. And we have a big concern about lightweight authentication mechanisms, and many researchers are working on lightweight mechanisms so that the very end devices can use those mechanisms. And as always, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and also deep learning, they're vastly used in intrusion detection systems, device profiling, fingerprinting, identification, and we see lots of papers about federated learning for privacy preserving approaches in machine learning problems. And as the last thing about this discussion, there are two promising initiatives that I've been following throughout this year. The first one is IOTA, which is a distributed ledger technology that basically overcomes many challenges in blockchain, such as the cost, the computation power, and it has a. I like one of their approaches. It says for validating and making transactions throughout the network, they say take one, give two. So if you want to send one transaction, you need to validate two other transactions. And based on this approach, they are proposing their distributed ledger technology, which is not considered a blockchain. And it's a bit different. And there's also the Matter protocol, which is basically a smart home connectivity standard for secure, reliable, and interoperable network transmissions, which is being developed under CSA, Connectivity Standards Alliance, or formerly known as ZigBee Alliance, an alliance of very huge companies such as Google, Amazon, and Apple, and lots of other companies. And it seems to be a very promising protocol that solves security and interoperability problems. So that concludes my presentation here. Thank you for listening. I would be more than happy to answer your questions, if any.
Thank you, Alireza, for the wonderful presentation. We have a question from Leila.
Okay. Do I need to
Yes.
stop sharing so that, or
No, it's fine.
okay.
Thank you, Alireza. It was a wonderful presentation. My question is about the initiative that I think it was IoTA. Is it an open source, or what is the group that run this initiative?
Yeah, very good question. The good news is that it's completely open source. They have uploaded their white paper, or they call it light paper. And you can, I haven't looked into it very deeply I mean, I've just been following the news, but there's everything there. It's completely open source, free, and you can easily follow their website. I don't know which companies developing or behind it, but it's a really big deal in
Okay, and another question is that deployed already, or it is just under development?
So it's both deployed. Its mainnet is deployed and it's working under the IoTA crypto system, or there are even IOTA tokens, but there are other layers under development, and they're hoping to, after validating and making sure that they're safe and working, they will add them to their mainnet and just improve their services.
Okay, and probably manufacturer, I think, should apply some components, deploy some components to be involved in IoTA. Am I correct?
To be involved, I'm not really sure.
I'm thinking that if any, I'm sure that we need to have some, I don't know, standards. I think manufacturer also should be involved. Any device cannot cannot use IoTA. I think there should be some.
So it's not that a device uses it, because it's sort of a distributed storage, like a blockchain. So you might want to implement it on your network, or basically use your network in their implementation. So they have a mainnet, like a blockchain. Assume like a blockchain. Then you can use your network on this framework or this initiative and see how it works.
Okay, so IoT device should store data on the main network that they have.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that. But I think some protocols and standards should be for this interaction. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alireza, for the presentation once again. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and I guess this will be Leila's question will be our last question for the day. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to joining us again sometime in the future. Thank you.
You're welcome, and that was a privilege to be here with you and share my experience and knowledge.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.
Bye. Good luck.
All right.
Bye.